But what I began to suspect was that the Chinese migration is actually being cloaked by the economic migration coming from South America. And that story is partially in the Darien of Panama, and it's all sorts of other places, including in various UN installations. There's some story that is difficult to piece together, and he's been physically traveling to all of its various epicenters and showing people. So,
And that is the story of mass migration.
mass migration, I now think, is a piece of it. That we went to another camp called San Vicente, and everything in San Vicente is different than it was at Canaan Mambria. San Vicente, first of all, it's not a town. This is a camp that is built as a transit camp. It's built of containers and various objects to house people. And it is almost entirely Chinese. Now, there were Chinese folks. Chinese.
That's a long way from China.
It sure is. And what's more, in this camp, the rule that you're able to go in and walk around and talk to people is not in evidence. The Senafront, the Panamanian border control, actually forbid us to go into the camp. So we had to stay on the outside of it. We were also forbidden to photograph it. So what photographs we have were taken covertly. But the most striking thing...
Wait, may I ask, so is it the government of China, do you believe, that's funding this?
Well, let me tell you the other thing I found, and then I think the answer to that will become clearer. Outside of the San Vicente camp, the Chinese migrants are, you can interact with them. There are a couple of shops where they go to buy water or snacks or whatever. And so you can interact with them at those places. They are the opposite of forthcoming. They have no interest in talking to outsiders. And I've been to dangerous places before. I've been to places where people fear their government and can't talk to you because they feel it's not safe. This didn't feel like that at all. This felt like people who did not want to share information because it would be a mistake to do so. And what's more, there was an incident where Michael, who has lived in China, he's been all over the world, and he started up or tried to start up a conversation with a guy who claimed to be from Korea. And Michael tripped him up and got him to speak Chinese. And then there was uproarious laughter at the fact that he had tried to pull this caper on Michael. So it is not a friendly migration. These Chinese folks, who are overwhelmingly male, military age, there are women present. I realized only this morning that in thinking back, I saw few, if any, children in the Chinese migration. They were everywhere in the other places we visited, but they were not present, as far as I remember, in the San Vicente camp. So what I have pieced together, and this is a place where I'm going to speculate. This is a hypothesis. This is not a conclusion. But what I began to suspect was that the Chinese migration is actually being cloaked by the economic migration coming from South America. And that is consistent with the observation that it has some different motivation. And once it gets through the Darien Gap, boards buses, and effectively what I now understand is that all of the countries in Central America are effectively waving the migrants through, because those migrants are not going to stop in these countries. As long as they keep going to the U.S., these countries are willing to remain silent about it. Now, in 1991, Heather and I actually traveled the other direction through Central America, through all of the countries south to to Costa Rica. And all of those borders are tightly controlled.
Oh, I've been, yeah.
And so it is very surprising to find those controls are effectively lifted here. That's clearly the result of a massive coordination. And of course, it's resulting in a large migration. I learned from Michael that the Chinese migrants in the San Vicente camp largely bypassed the Darien. Because they have money, they can go by boat and they can skip most of the peril of the Darien Gap. And in any case, it's a very different phenomenon. And to see it housed so separately is quite conspicuous. I do not know what the rationale for this
Can you
would be.
estimate, do you have any sense of how many Chinese, these are Chinese nationals?
They seem to be.
How many did you see, ish? Talking 60 or 600 or?
It's very hard to say because we were held at one edge of the camp. So I probably saw 150 faces, but the camp
Wow.
is deeper. I regard the Chinese people as victims of an oppressive government that I fear for my own reasons.
For sure.
So there's nothing about the fact that these folks are Chinese that throws me. And if they were fleeing that government, I'm not sure what we should do about it, but I'm certainly supportive of their
You would feel
desire.
sympathy for
I would
sure.
feel a great deal of sympathy. And in fact, I felt a great deal of sympathy for all of the other migrants that I met. But the sense of, it's really hard not to use the term hostility that I felt from the Chinese was particularly unsettling given that I know where they're headed. Right? They're headed to the U.S.